somebody else. I'll bet they're not so...
We interrupt for this bulletin just in from our WCCO News Bureau. It's from Los Angeles. New York Senator Robert Kennedy was shot in the hip as he left the platform from which he had made a victory statement in Los Angeles. We repeat this bulletin. New York Senator Robert Kennedy was shot in the hip as he left the platform from which he made a victory statement in Los Angeles. Further details, as soon as they arrive, we shall pass them along to you. We interrupt once again to bring you this bulletin from Los Angeles. New York Senator Robert Kennedy has been shot in the hip. The senator was shot as he left the platform from which he made his victory statement in Los Angeles. We'll have details in just a moment. Now, further on that bulletin from Los Angeles, it is believed that Robert Kennedy has been shot in the head, but he is still alive. Senator Kennedy, brother of the assassinated President John F. Kennedy, lay on the floor of a hotel kitchen, blood streaming from his face, his eyes open but unseeing. "Will you please clear the room for medical aid for the senator," said a man at the rostrum. The senator's assailant, as yet unidentified, was being held a few feet away by a half-dozen Kennedy supporters. The shooting happened just after Kennedy had left the stage of the embassy room at the Ambassador, where he was making his speech, his victory statement, in Los Angeles. Further particulars, further details, coming up in just a few moments. The time is 30 minutes past 2. This is 830 WCCO, Minneapolis, St. Paul. The temperature in the Twin Cities, 77 degrees under a fair sky. Further details on the attempted assassination of Robert F. Kennedy in moments. We repeat this bulletin. New York Senator Robert Kennedy was shot in the head minutes ago. Kennedy was shot as he left the platform from which he made a victory statement in Los Angeles. And in case you didn't hear, the senator's assailant, as yet unidentified, was being held a few feet away by a half-dozen Kennedy supporters. The shooting happened just after Kennedy had left the stage of the embassy room where he had spoken before the nation's television and radio audiences. Senator Kennedy, brother of the assassinated President John F. Kennedy, lay on the floor in a hotel kitchen, blood streaming from his face, his eyes open but unseeing, but we have been told that he is alive at this moment. As soon as we can pull together further details, rest assured we'll pass them on to you immediately. From 830 WCCO, Minneapolis, St. Paul. This is Franklin Hobbs. This WCCO Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul. We repeat this bulletin. New York Senator Robert Kennedy was shot in the head minutes ago as he left the platform from which he made a victory statement in Los Angeles. The reports coming in are conflicting reports from reports that we've had of people on the scene. It has now not been ascertained as to whether or not the attempted assassinator has been held or is being held or captured. And as a matter of fact, it's something of a state of emergency throughout the Los Angeles immediate area, at any rate, of the Ambassador Hotel. We are also given to understand that it is a massive confusion, and at this moment we can give you no further word other than the fact that the senator has been taken to a hospital. The name of that hospital is yet unidentified, and further, we are given to understand at this moment there were other people who were victims of the shooting. At least one person injured very seriously. And now we will repeat the original bulletin once again. New York Senator Robert Kennedy was shot in the head as he left the platform from which he made a victory statement in Los Angeles. As soon as further word arrives, it'll be passed along to you immediately. Further word now on the attempted assassination of Robert Kennedy. Democratic presidential hopeful Kennedy was shot this morning just after he had claimed victory in the California primary. He is the brother of the assassinated president, John Kennedy. The senator's condition cannot be determined immediately. First reports do indicate, however, that he is conscious. The initial report said that Kennedy had been shot in the hip. There are other reports that he was shot in the head. A key aide of Kennedy said a lot of shots were fired as the senator and his party left the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. One report says a man who allegedly fired the shots is being held, and he is not identified. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Office ordered a general alert for law enforcement officers in that immediate area. No further word than this at the moment, other than the fact that mass confusion does seem to reign in that particular area, and that's certainly understandable. We understand, too, from indirect reports, and some direct, that other persons have been injured. One woman reported as wounded seriously. Now, again, the detailed report that we did receive initially pictured Kennedy on the floor of a hotel kitchen, blood streaming from his face, his eyes open but unseeing. But that could be an overly dramatic report of this scene. They do say that he is conscious and that he is on his way, or perhaps has already arrived at an unnamed hospital in Los Angeles. And again, I repeat, the moment that further word is received, we'll pass it along to you immediately. This is Hobbs, this WCCO Radio, Minneapolis, St. Paul. Further on the attempted assassination of Robert Kennedy. He was reported shot after making a victory statement in the California Democratic primary. And we have further word indicating that the gentleman who attempted the assassination has been taken into custody. At least this is a rumor to this point. It has been reported by an eyewitness that a man, apparently of Latin descent, was handcuffed and taken through the lobby of the Ambassador Hotel by police. However, they still have a state of emergency in that immediate area of the Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles. As yet, the senator's assailant is not identified and was being held a few feet away by a half a dozen of Kennedy's supporters. Then the police took over, handcuffed him, and removed him from the scene. We do not have any report as to the condition of Senator Robert Kennedy. We do have conflicting reports, one report stating that he was shot in the hip and the other that he was shot in the head as he left the platform. Further reports indicate that observers on the scene have said that they were witness to the fact that other persons in the assemblage were injured seriously by gunfire. There had been considerable gunfire, as a matter of fact, reported by several radio reporters. As of the moment, we repeat, the senator's assailant has not been identified, but they have taken someone into custody in the lobby of the Ambassador Hotel, and he has been removed to police headquarters. We do know that Senator Kennedy has been removed to a hospital. As to what hospital, we have no idea, nor to his condition. As soon as further developments come to us, we'll pass them along to you by way of 830 WCCO, the Twin Cities.
Some such thing. I asked the senator himself about it at that time. He said nothing had happened. And I got it then from another reporter who said what had happened was that some youngsters standing on an overpass had wanted to drop some candy into the senator's car as he went by. The candy fell. Some of it apparently touched the senator. He was shocked and he sat down. and this led to all kinds of reports that the senator had been hit by a missile, and he was hit in the head, and he was hurt, and so on and so forth. So we do, in these instances, have all sorts of conflicting reports. I say again that Ray McMacken, as trained reporter on the scene there, should very well have given us a true picture of what is going on. Now we go back to the Kennedy headquarters, the Ambassador Hotel. Ray? Is Ray McMacken there? Or Ray Williams at the Ambassador Hotel?
We were expecting, apparently they are not making contact right now, Boyd. We'll stand by and complete that call just as soon as we possibly can. It would seem, as a result of this tragedy and other tragedies that have taken place in the last few years, that there will be greater and tighter security for the nation's major political candidates, no matter what the occasion, Boyd. There are many who have called for greater security in times past. Of course, a candidate's appeal is that of being able to mingle with the crowd, to say hello, to shake hands, and to speak a few words. This, of course, puts him under these trying circumstances in grave danger, as we know here. Of course, who would think for a moment that in a victory celebration, such as the one that the senator was enjoying, that this would turn into a personal tragedy and personal injury to him? How you could possibly screen everyone at a victory celebration is the unanswered question. Obviously, you could not, unless it is confined, or a candidate's appearances are confined away from large crowds and into appearances on television or appearances on radio. This again takes the senator or the candidate, whoever he might be, out of that personal contact with the people. He must have that contact in order to influence the voter and influence those who would cast their ballot. Now we're going to swing back to Kennedy headquarters to Ray Williams.
Well, Bob, my producer, Marshall Boyd, has been out in the crowd all evening getting people to interview. And just as Kennedy was leaving the platform, there was quite a bit of pandemonium that broke out. He immediately ran over to see what was happening, as the females were hysterically screaming. And he came back with the word that there had been a shooting. Now, he has talked with a friend of his, and he will now tell us exactly what it was the friend relayed to him in connection with this tragedy.
Yes, Ray, I saw a fireman friend of mine who wanted to remain anonymous, and he confirmed Kennedy had been shot, that he had been taken to Central Receiving Hospital. He said the suspect was apprehended, and that Kennedy fans, Kennedy supporters, literally tried to beat the suspect to death. And they were really giving him quite a pummeling on the ground. That's what he told me.
Well, this was somewhat evident at the time that you ran over, that there was at least a fight in progress or some unnecessary commotion.
As you know, Ray, I ran over there to try and, on a wild 1,000-to-1 shot, trying to get Kennedy to arm microphones, and I heard screaming, which I thought were Beatle-type screams from young fans, and I heard breaking glass, and then people crying and saying that he'd been shot, he'd been shot, he'd been shot. And
from that point on, Bob, why, we know just about the same thing that you know, and as we said earlier, we have been instructed, the press, although the press is not moving, the embassy room is pretty well barren now of supporters of Kennedy. The majority of the people here are the press. We've been told that that's it, we should move on, and actually that's about the story, tragic as it is, from here at the embassy room at the Ambassador Hotel. Back to you, Bob.
Ray Williams there. Boyd, as happened in the aftermath of the assassination of President Kennedy, the scene of shock and turmoil here was nationally advertised, just and televised, just as it was when Jack Ruby shot Lee Harvey Oswald. The television reporter said the man who fired the shot was just about 10 feet from Senator Kennedy at the time. The reporter said that Stephen Smith, Kennedy's brother and campaign manager, also was shot. The American Broadcasting Company said its unit manager, William Weissel, was shot. Kennedy, of course, has been taken to a Los Angeles hospital, and John D. O'Connell, KNX radio newsman, is on that scene and will report to us just as soon as he possibly can.
Of course, the major emphasis is on the results of the treatment of Senator Kennedy, but I would also like to know what happened to the other people involved. Steve Smith, this woman that Ray McMacken said he saw shot in the head. They set up an emergency operating room apparently in one of the kitchens there at the Ambassador Hotel. Perhaps Ray Williams or Ray McMacken can get in there and see if we have any report on the others involved.
We understand that 5 doctors treated the senator before he was removed to the hospital. Another witness to the shooting said he fell down right away, just lay there. Gabor Kadar, who said he was waiting at the rear exit to the room to shake hands with the senator, heard 4 or 5 shots and saw Kennedy and a woman fall to the floor. Kadar said Senator Kennedy was holding the right side of his chest, and there was also blood on his head. A priest, before the senator was removed from the hotel, back to Kennedy headquarters for more information from Ray Williams.
Bob, we have a young lady here that just informed us that Steve Smith, Kennedy's campaign manager, was not shot. If you would come over here, please, and let us have your information.
Stephen Smith, the senator's brother-in-law, was not shot. I was right there at the time, and he was standing up on a table. He was rather angry and rather distraught, but he certainly was not shot. He's perfectly all right. He's simply gone with the senator to the hospital.
Fine, thank you very much. And so that clears up the point on Stephen Smith, Bob.
Thank you, Ray. We'll be standing by for any late information that you might have. A priest, as I started to say, before the senator was removed from the hotel, said he attempted to give the senator final rites of the Roman Catholic Church, but the surging crowd pushed him away. The priest said, I did give him the rosary, and he clinched it tightly. As I was pushed away, there was blood on his head. The arrested man was hurried through a lobby, throng still yelling and screaming at the news of the shooting. Kill him, lynch him, many in the crowd shouted, and many tried to reach the man, and as we know from Bob Ferris's report, there were some fights that broke out at that time. Police did manage to hustle him out of the lobby and down the stairs to an exit. We have no information as to who the man was. 2 reports, one that he was Negro, another that he was Latin American. We will not know until the police issue an official report on that.
I would imagine in this case, Bob, that the police are not going to be issuing very many reports for some time to remove the carnival atmosphere that surrounded the assassination of President John F. Kennedy when they in Dallas and the police officials there.
Police, as we said, captured a man believed to be the assailant, about 25 years of age, curly-haired and olive-skinned, and they hustled him out through the lobby of the Ambassador Hotel, a shotgun at his back. David Esquith of Los Angeles, Michael Agron, and Ron Udell, all of Los Angeles, brought in a friend whom they said was also wounded in the shooting, brought the friend into Central Receiving Hospital. They identified him as Erwin Stroll, 17, of Los Angeles. They said he did not appear to be seriously injured. The gunman was caught standing on some sort of box. The shooting occurred in a small anteroom off the main ballroom. Only those near the door knew at first that there had been a shooting. 5 doctors, as we mentioned earlier, treated the senator before removal to the hospital. Several Kennedy supporters called for towels immediately after the shooting. A news reporter hastily stripped off a velvet tablecloth and rushed into the kitchen area, jammed with the shouting political supporters of the senator. The scene, complete confusion. Television cameramen and men carrying tape recorders stood on serving tables and tried to hold their equipment close to where first aid was being applied to the wounded. All those shot were bleeding. A tablecloth was used to stem the flow of blood from a blond man who was stretched over a chair, his shirt up, bleeding profusely around the body. Kennedy's eyes were reported to be open. KNX News reporter Ray McMacken, who was an eyewitness to that scene, said they were open very definitely, but he was not moving. The wife of one of the doctors said his condition seemed not to be critical, however. As we say, there have been a number of conflicting reports as to who was shot and who was not shot in this case. We hope to have information on it.
Bob, those reports that we have from the wire services seem to confirm what Ray McMacken said about a blond man being shot somewhere in the waist area. He told us that one of the victims had been shot in the waist. He also told us about a young man being shot apparently in the hip. And we had the report of a 17-year-old youth being taken to Central Receiving Hospital by a friend, apparently not seriously wounded. And this 17-year-old being shot in the hip apparently would clear up some of the confusion over some of the earlier reports that Senator Kennedy had been shot in the hip.
We're waiting for John D. O'Connell to report from the hospital to try to give us some further information on Senator Kennedy's condition. There's absolutely no report available as yet on his condition.
This is the CBS Radio Network.
This is 830 WCCO, Minneapolis, St. Paul. In 1 minute, 3 o'clock in the morning. We shall, I'm afraid, have to repeat some of the material that you have already heard, the details concerning the attempted assassination of New York Senator Robert Kennedy. And, of course, we'll bring you further word on other news across the world as well. New York Senator Robert Kennedy was shot this morning in Los Angeles just minutes after he claimed victory in the California Democratic presidential primary. Also, an unidentified woman was shot, as well as another man. The apparent assailant, a man about 25 years of age with curly hair and of Latin appearance, and he was captured on the spot by Kennedy's supporters. Also, William Wiesel, a unit manager of one of the network television organizations on the West Coast, was also shot. Senator Kennedy was taken immediately to Los Angeles Central Receiving Hospital. His condition at the moment is not known. Before Kennedy was removed from the Ambassador Hotel, a priest said that he attempted to give Kennedy last rites of the Roman Catholic Church, but that the surging crowd had pushed him away. The priest said that he passed a rosary into Kennedy's hands. The priest also said there was blood on the senator's head. Some reports have indicated that the senator was shot in the head. The man believed to be the assailant was rushed through a lobby throng, still shaken at the news of the shooting, and later still another person, the fifth, was identified as a victim of the shooting, and he is further identified as 17-year-old Irwin Stroll of Los Angeles. First reports say that he does not appear to be injured seriously. First reports further say that the gunman was caught standing on some sort of box. The shooting occurred in a small anteroom off the main ballroom. Only those near the door knew at first that there had been a shooting. 5 doctors treated the senator before his removal to the hospital. In the event that we can get a report from the hospital scene as to the current condition of New York Senator Robert Kennedy, we shall rejoin CBS. Former Lieutenant Governor James Allen apparently won the Democratic senatorial nomination in Alabama yesterday. Allen led throughout the counting in his narrow victory over U.S. Representative Armistead Selden. Vice President Humphrey yesterday has called for an end to racial violence, but at the same time, he told government-employed unionists that the need for public order must not serve as an alibi for inaction on some very real injustices in America. Reports from Saigon say Viet Cong gunners have unleashed new mortar and rocket attacks against the South Vietnamese capital. One round struck a hotel near the President's Independence Palace, and at the same time, rocket fire was reported in residential areas of Pleiku in the Central Highlands. No casualty reports immediately available. U.S. intelligence sources have predicted that the communists will continue the Saigon account. The wife of the captain of the captured spy ship, Pueblo, says the ship is being treated like ancient history. Now we're ready to return to CBS on the West Coast.
And John D. O'Connell.
John, what is your report?
Yeah, Bob, just only a few moments ago, Senator Robert Kennedy was transferred to Good Samaritan Hospital. Now, no newsmen really know very much at all because of the fact that police have kept all the newsmen in a room by themselves, promising that a release would be made. The release was never made. I talked to one officer who brought Kennedy in. He went into the room when Kennedy was there. He said that the doctor said he is in critical condition. Again, he has been transferred to Good Samaritan Hospital. I might also point out, 2 women have definitely, that I have seen, are wounded, and 4 other men. When I arrived, one man was holding onto his head, another man was holding onto his stomach, a woman was being carried in on a stretcher, and she, in turn, was bleeding profusely from the head. Again, to recap, Senator Robert Kennedy has been transferred to Good Samaritan Hospital. This is John D. O'Connell for KNX News Radio.
Thank you, John. Now we're going to switch to Bob Ferris at the Ambassador Hotel. Bob?
Yes, I've just gotten an interview with a chap by the name of Joe LaHive, who was one of the gentlemen who captured the suspect, or the prime suspect in this shooting. I know the type of gun it was, I know who captured him, and I will try to detail it as quickly as possible. Joe LaHive is a backer of Kennedy. He's a big man, about 6 feet 2 inches tall. Right behind him was Rosie Greer, the huge football player for the Los Angeles Rams, and near both of them was Rayford Johnson, who, of course, is also a big man. When the small, Filipino-looking now, we hear, suspect had finished shooting, and he apparently shot about 4 or 5 shots out of a Colt-type revolver, which later Roosevelt Greer grabbed out of his hand and handed to Rayford Johnson. The gun is now in custody. Then Rayford Johnson literally threw his body in between where Senator Kennedy had gone to the floor and the suspect to block off any further shots. Rosie was not shot, but he did insert his body so that there would be no further shots. Then immediately fell on the suspect, so to speak. Joe LaHive at the same time grabbed him by the legs and assisted in getting him to the floor. And at the same time, Rayford Johnson did the same thing. So therefore, 3 big men wrestled this youngster to the floor. He apparently was a man about between 20 and 25, of swarthy complexion, but not a Negro, as we understand it right now. What happened when the man was wrestled to the floor? He kept shouting brutality, brutality, and things of that nature. He was fuzzy, curly-headed. Then Rayford and Rosie Greer picked him up, actually, and started rushing him toward the door to the embassy room. Now, what I saw was after they had picked up an escort of police who were armed with sawed-off shotguns, and these police and Roosevelt Greer and Rayford Johnson and this man Joe LaHive were rushing the man out, and the escort of police were keeping everybody else away from the suspect. The suspect was then rushed out of the hotel and is now being questioned at police headquarters. He was not injured, but apparently was cringing as he rushed out when I saw him in fear of being injured. Because as he passed through the lobby, almost everybody who saw him was trying to get at him in order to commit some sort of mayhem on him. Joe LaHive said all that they did not try to injure the young man because they wanted to save him for questioning to find out, as he put it, what causes people to do horrible things of this nature. As for the second suspect, Joe LaHive did not see him. He said that when the shots rang out, they were in staccato fashion, 4 or 5 shots, and he said either the one suspect fired 4 or 5 shots to extreme speed out of the Colt-type revolver, or else there were 2 suspects, and they were both firing at the time. We now hear down here that one, we understand an ABC newsman was wounded, also a woman was wounded, and also a child was wounded. We do not know the extent of the injuries, but that is the situation, and that is the way that it occurred. Joe LaHive has submitted to an interview. I do have that interview on tape, and I hope to be able to get to someplace where we can